The Indie Writers Club is brought to you by Publish Drive. With one click, self-publish your ebooks, audiobooks and print books to thousands of stores and libraries worldwide. And now you can start for free forever. Publish Drive's new free plan lets you publish your first ebook to 35 stores worldwide absolutely free. No subscription fees, no commissions. Keep 100% of the royalties. Get your titles online in just a few minutes at publishdrive.com.
It's the Indie Writers Club with Cara Clare and James Blatch. A place to relax, chat, learn and vent about life as an independent author. Get episode alerts and links at indiewritersclub.com. Now, here's Cara and James.
Welcome to the Indie Writers Club. I am Cara Clare.
And I'm James Blatch.
Hello, James Blatch. Long time no see.
I know, we actually saw each other IRL yesterday.
We did, yeah.
And I just had a chat with a new Vinci author who lives in Newmarket, would you believe? And I said, I was there yesterday. You could have met us in the Porto Lounge.
Well, you have to put me in touch. I can have a friend.
Carolyn Marnie is Mahoney, it's spelt, but pronounced Marnie. And she writes thrillers.
I feel like I've heard of her.
Police procedurals. She's a member of a golf club nearby, so we're going to play golf in the summer.
Yeah, of course you are. Of course you are. I won't join you.
But no, you could, a caddy. Could carry my clubs.
Maybe for like a drink after.
I met Knight.
You did, yeah. Got photographic proof. I mean, he literally stood up for an hour and then round about when we were ready to leave, he laid down. Yeah.
Beautiful boy. Lovely boy.
Knight is the greyhound, by the way, if anybody's not been listening along. It's not my child with a weird name.
So we're recording this on the 14th of January. And in theory, on the 19th of January, TikTok will disappear off the App Store or become disconnected in the United States of America, which represents a big chunk of TikTok users. I mean, probably more than 70%.
Yeah, I mean, I think the theory is that if it goes, obviously the US internet doesn't work in the same way as China's internet, for example. So they can't just go into people's phones overnight and make the TikTok app disappear. But the app stores would be prevented from selling it and updating it, and therefore there'd come a point where you wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Well, that's the theory.
I read that it would be disconnected, so you could have the app on your phone, but it just won't connect to TikTok anymore.
Okay.
If that happens, I mean, I don't think it will happen. I've never thought it will happen. People have been talking about TikTok.
Trump has even said that he would like the Supreme Court to delay it, hasn't he?
Yeah,
until because he's got a big following and
he did quite well on TikTok. He said so maybe. For that solid reason, he's going to allow people to use it.
Well, I mean, I think he's a businessman as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
And the amount of money that's generated for creators, by creators on TikTok in the US is just phenomenal.
How many creators earn a living through TikTok? And
it's just unbelievable the amount of lives that it's changed, not just BookTok, everything. Every kind of niche or industry that you can think of, people have taken off through TikTok.
Can you imagine living in LA at the moment as a content creator, earning your money from TikTok? Your house has just burnt down and then they're going to stop TikTok. There'll be a revolution, another revolution.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to happen personally, but I think one of the reasons it won't happen is because America will have a rude awakening. I mean, the old men in the Congress building who don't understand the internet are the ones who are passing this legislation. What they don't understand is you can't censor the internet, even if you think you can, in a Western democracy. You can do it in a dictatorship like China, where the penalty for connecting to the internet is 25 years in prison or death, without circumnavigating the government's censorship. But in America and the UK, you can close down TikTok, but another app's going to spring up. In fact, I think people have already chosen one that seems to be very closely connected to the Chinese government. Red
something, wasn't it? People are downloading that in their droves today.
So
it's like shops to top the App Store.
And then what happened? Another 5 years of threatening to close that down because of its links to the Chinese government. And in the end, the Chinese government may as well just set up a new app every week. And that's sort of thing that will happen because you can't do what they're trying to do, which is to tell people what part of the internet they can and they can't use. I mean, apart from illegalities, clearly,
Yeah.
I think it's right that if you access illegal images or use it for terrorism and stuff.
Yeah, that's very different. That's very different, isn't it? But I think I don't know. We'll talk about it next week and we'll see whether it's happened or not happened. But I think the lesson, whether it does or doesn't, we've said this before, is even if you're very reliant on TikTok, you've just got to make sure that you're not solely reliant on that. You are doing other things as well. But I've seen people like Emily Blackwood and Lee Savino, who are massive romance authors, very successful on TikTok, saying, don't go into a blind panic. Just try and switch your mindset. Like, we're indies, we pivot. That's what we do really well. TikTok gave us so many opportunities. So even if it is banned, don't panic. Just think, okay, what are we going to look for? What new exciting opportunities are going to come out of this? What can I do? Just try and switch your mindset on it. Because I know that there are people who are genuinely worried.
Yeah, of course, people are worried. I mean, the people who are most worried, I think, probably are not. I mean, people who sold. I mean, like you, if you're in the States, you rely on TikTok a lot for your book sales.
Well, I mean, 80% of my audience is the US. So if TikTok is banned in the US, it is going to have a huge impact on my book sales. I mean, I guess those of us in the UK are thinking, well, that's all right. We can still use the app. So we'll just focus on our UK audience. A lot of people have been saying, Germany is they're getting more and more views in Germany as their US views seem to be a little bit suppressed, which actually I have noticed as well, is that my account now seems to be skewing a little bit more towards the UK naturally. Right. Whereas from the beginning, for me, it's always been US centric, and that's been without a VPN or anything else. But yeah, it still will have a huge impact on a lot of us in the UK if it disappears.
So yeah, it's an incredible thing. So we'll see. So what day is the 19th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th? Sunday?
So possibly, because I think Trump comes into, I don't know the phrase for it, 20th. Into power.
Inaugurate.
On the 20th. Yeah, that's the word. I lost it. So I think the 19th was kind of chosen deliberately to try and make it happen before he arrives. But we'll see. Stay tuned. We'll discuss it next week. Or we won't. We'll just go, oh, it's still here. Never mind. Move on.
We'll all join that Chinese government one, Red, whatever it's called. I've got a notice.
There was another one as well, Lemonade or something. I don't know. People all flock to, YouTube Shorts.
Red Note is the number one.
Note.
Red Note is the one app in the App Store in the US yesterday.
Which is supposed to be a mix of TikTok, Instagram and Pinterest, but actually owned this one by the Chinese government. So I feel like they're sort of achieving the opposite of what they were going for.
There's been lots of comedy videos on TikTok of I'm your Chinese spy. I just want to say it's been a pleasure for the last 5 years. I've got to know you so well. I can see how hard you worked on your diet, exercise, and that new job you got 2 years ago. And although your phone bills have been quite high the last year or so, I think things are looking up for you anyway. This is the end. TikTok's being closed down, so goodbye.
All those cute videos of your dog sleeping on the sofa.
Yeah.
I've got to know him really well.
Yeah. Well, we'll see then what happens on Sunday. And on Monday, I guess, which is my son's birthday, coincidentally, it's inauguration day in America. They get a new president. Wheel out the old one, probably literally, and wheel in the new orange man. Okay, that'll be another era.
Yeah, that's the topic for a different podcast, I think.
It's easy to joke about it because we live over here.
I know, yeah.
Oh, by the way, our economy's tanking at the moment. So if you're going abroad soon, which I am, the pound is now worth it says 6-year low at the the 120.
So is that good or bad? If I get paid in dollars, is that good or bad for me?
It's good. So if you're selling in dollars, because your dollars will buy more pounds. The pound's gone weak. But if you go to Canada to see your children, for instance, who might do that, next month you have to buy Canadian dollars with your pounds. Your pounds are not buying many dollars.
Well, I'm sad for you, but happy for me because I get paid for my ghostwriting in dollars. So,
well, I did pay for our big expense is going to be dog sledding, which I've paid for.
I thought you were going to say dog sitting. We should say for those who are watching on YouTube that James has a cold.
A streaming horrible cold.
Yeah, I didn't hug him yesterday.
Hey, missed my hug. I hope so. Knight didn't get it. I don't want this cold. I don't know why I've got it. It's a ridiculous decision.
Well, you've been through quite a lot the last few weeks. Sometimes your body's got to process stuff.
Yeah, I think my son bought it from Canada. I think it's Canadian cold.
At least you'll be then he's done you a favour because you're getting immunity to the germs now, so that when you go on holiday, because that would be sod's law, wouldn't it? Because this is your first proper holiday where you're being banned from taking work with you for a very long time. So I think if you got ill and spent the whole time in bed, Jill would probably never speak to you again.
I'll get some writing done. Trouble is, when you're feeling like this, you don't feel like working. You don't feel like writing. You don't feel like anything. I feel yesterday and today I felt particularly rotten. I dragged myself bravely out of my house to meet you yesterday.
You did. Thank you so much. And the actual funny thing was, when I arrived, I went and sat at a table by the window, and I was thinking, it's going to be late, isn't it? Checking my watch. I sent a text saying, oh, I'm here. I've got a table by the window. And I just sort of caught someone in the corner of my eye. And James was already there with a croissant and a coffee, just at the very back of the coffee shop, and sort of
working. I've been out ages.
Waved at me from a distance.
And we decided a couple of things. So one thing, we think we may have found a venue, a very exciting historic hall in Cambridge, the outskirts of Cambridge, for our retreat in June between the SBS Live date and Rare London, which is the readers event, romance readers event at the Excel Centre. So
super exciting. When you showed me the website, I was like, oh my God.
No, it looks beautiful. I mean, it's a stately home, beautiful gardens. June will be a perfect time to be there. We've got a lovely oak panelled room to be in, cheap accommodation. So we're going to try and keep the costs as low as possible for people. We're looking for about 20 people to join us for 3 nights, a couple of full days where we'll have some sessions in the morning. We'll have some writing sprint sessions, own time writing. We'll do probably evening meal. We'll do 1 night in Cambridge. So we'll organise transport. So all details to come. We need to go and visit the venue and have a chat with them. But that is an exciting thing. So if you're interested.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Just the chance to kind of have the writing time, but also a little bit of, workshopping time, roundtable discussions. It's so valuable when you do things like that.
Yeah. So I will set up a wait list. I'll do that. So
yeah,
I'll set by the time this goes out. So if you go to indiewritersclub.com/retreat. Excuse me. Retreat. Sign up there. Your email address will go onto a wait list, and you'll be the first to be informed that tickets are available. So we'll do it that way.
Yeah, because I think we need to keep the numbers relatively 20 max, really, don't we? To keep that kind of intimate sort of feel. So, join the wait list if you want to be first when ticket sales open.
indiewritersclub.com.
Do I have to buy a ticket?
Yes. Yours are twice the price, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Right.
James has been excited about this week's topic.
I have.
For about 6 weeks. When did you send me the link to this? It was 18th of December. You sent me this.
Yeah.
Link to what we're going to talk about today.
I think what we should do. This is a book by a guy called Clint Murphy, and he is an entrepreneur. I think real estate, is his thing, but he thinks he's one of his productivity guys, thinks about working, problem solving, approach to life that's going to be bring most success to you. And all of that applies to us. We are business people as well as authors, and there's stuff to the creative side of things as well. And also, if you write books about people's everyday life, this stuff I think will filter in. So I thought we'd go through. There are razors. They're called razors. The most famous razor people quote occasionally is Occam's razor. Excuse my doorbell. That's my man doing my brakes, changing my car brakes, is Occam's razor, which will be the first one we discuss. What I think we should do is we'll talk about the razors one by one and try and think how they might apply to us as authors or in our books.
Okay. Or maybe Clint says here, I had to actually open a Twitter X account to look at this stuff because I've never had one before. So Clint says a razor is a rule of thumb that simplifies decision making. So we're going to go through and see how they apply to us.
Okay, so the first one is the aforementioned Occam's razor. And Occam's razor is the easiest answer is often the right answer. So the unraveling of this is don't complicate your thinking when you don't need to. If you hear a meowing sound under the sofa, it's probably the cat, not hidden speaker playing cat sounds. So it's the old expression, if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it's probably a duck. It's what Occam's razor is. It's quite useful in wider life to dismiss conspiracy theories, like, for instance, the old one about men didn't go on the moon, it was all a hoax. As soon as you look into that, you realise how fantastically complicated it would have been to a hoax and how much easier it would have been to put men on the moon. Occam's razor applies there. It's very, very likely that it did happen because it's almost impossible for it not to have happened. And I think it's something, this is a razor that you keep in your mind all the time, every day, right?
Didn't Jonathan Creek, I don't think anyone from the US will have ever heard of this. He was like a bumbly UK magician detective series. Wasn't that his sort of thing? Whenever he did something complicated, it was actually like the simplest answer is usually
the
one.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
we're spending a lot of time on Occam's razor. We've got a lot of razors to get through.
Okay, go.
Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice what you can attribute to stupidity. If your little brother colours on your homework, it's probably not because he hates you. It's more likely he didn't know how important your homework was. So this is about perception versus reality. Now, this is I think, a very internet type razor to be.
I thought this
useful.
was really relevant for us as authors, because I think, especially if we're talking about reviews, and I think we were going to do an episode, weren't we, where we read out our bad reviews.
Yeah, we would.
I think a lot of people do take it very, very personally when they get bad reviews, when they get comments on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter. But not just that, if people complain about something, people's attitude to complaining can be a little bit off. And generally, it's not because they hate you. It's just because they don't realize, like, for example, with a printing delay, this is just the most recent example that I've got, had quite a snotty email from a reader who'd ordered something which had taken over 2 weeks to get to them. But that's because they don't realize the way that we work. They don't know that I don't have a big warehouse of books sitting there that are being dispatched instantly. They're print on demand. But why would they know that? So they're not coming at that from, malice towards me as a person or my business or my books. It's just not understanding.
Yeah, and this is partly your attitude, and you've got to catch yourself out if you are the person who immediately thinks they're out to get you. And that's the same when you read. I remember someone telling me that someone was targeting their books, advertising.
Yeah, I've heard this before.
This author's trying to take them down, so that I'm going to take them down. I want your help. How do I target them? And I'm thinking, they're targeting your books because you're selling lots of books.
Mm-hmm.
People target my books because they know, I'm quite adept at marketing, and every time I launch a new book, I see my friends' books appearing there. That happens all the time, and it's not a malice thing. It's good marketing. That's what they're doing. Don't worry about it. If they're worth targeting, target them. If they're not worth targeting, don't spend an iota of your energy trying to take down another author who's using your success to sell their books. Because you know what? The reader who reads your book can read their books. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and also another one is pirate sites, which obviously it's annoying, it's wrong. We all know that, but it's not personal. They're not pirating your books because they hate you. They're likely pirating your books because they've done really well. So sure, issue the takedown request or whatever. But I see so many people who got so emotionally invested in that, and they get so upset and they take it as a personal attack. And it's not. They'll do it to anybody. It is not about you. It's not worth you spending that mental energy on it. Just let it go.
Okay. Next one, Sagan's razor. I guess this is Carl Sagan, the wonderful astronomer, physicist, late Carl Sagan. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The weight of proof rests with the person making a claim, and the more unusual the assertion, the more substantial the evidence needed. You should ask for solid proof if someone says they saw a unicorn or a polar bear shifting. So I think this is relevant to us in making decisions. Like, for instance, TikTok. So 4 years ago, I received a couple of emails from people very het up saying, you must not teach people to go on TikTok. The Chinese are using it to spy. They're ruining lives. Now, I ignored it, but partly one of the reasons for ignoring it is Sagan's razor. Where's the evidence of that? Just somebody thinking China's spying on you isn't enough for me. I need to see that this person's life has been destroyed because the Chinese spied on them, and they use that against them or whatever. What's the downside? That's the problem with this whole TikTok thing. But that's just one example of this. Don't come off Amazon because someone's told you they're an evil corporation. What's the evidence? And why, how's that affecting me?
Yeah, I think I saw something like that the other day. Somebody had commented on a post in one of the self-publishing groups saying, oh, don't publish on Amazon. They're the devil, and a bunch of, frankly ridiculous claims. And I think we can apply this to when people make claims about their income and their earnings sometimes. And most indies are quite transparent if they are going to say something about their earnings, but just be a little bit discerning about that. But also maybe the AI debate surrounding artists and things like that kind of sprung to my mind, because I've yet to encounter an artist who's gone out of business because of its AI art. All the artists that I contact are so fully booked that they've got waiting lists until the end of the year, and I can't find one. to work with. And that's a much bigger conversation. We've got more to go through. But I think that's another thing of just examine the kind of pitchforks out type claims before blindly following them.
Before reacting. I mean, I've given up arguing with people about that. You get emails, long emails from people saying, don't use Amazon. Do not under any circumstances tell people to upload their books to Amazon. They're a terrible corporation. They don't treat their workers properly. And I think, well, if you've seen the evidence of that and you're convinced of it, then absolutely don't put your books on Amazon. But don't tell everyone you ever meet not to do that unless you're prepared to hand them a dossier of the actual evidence of what's going on here, because otherwise it's just gobbledygook stuff you've read on the internet. Okay, so in the next one, I think the next couple are
this one.
They're a little bit contradictory, but they're quite useful for productivity. The first one is called Parkinson's Law, which says that work expands to fill the time available for its completion.
So to me, that is definitely true.
There you go. Setting tighter deadlines gets tasks done more quickly and efficiently. If you have 1 day to clean your room, it'll take you a whole day. You'll probably get it done in an hour if you have 1 hour to clean your room.
Yep. I mean, if I give myself 3 months to write a book, it will take me 3 months to write a book. If I give myself a week to write a book, I'll write it in a week. So for me, it is absolutely 100% true. But I don't think this is universal. I think it depends on how you function.
Well, it's like all these things. There's strong elements of truth in this, but it's not everything. But I think, I think in any organization, particularly corporate organizations, if they say they've got a project that needs delivering, because I can remember that we had when I was at the BBC, I had a boss called Greg Dyke, who was actually brilliant. He got stuff done really quickly. In the UK, there was a big news program called News at 10 on ITN, and they'd run for years, and they used the Big Ben clocks. And the BBC News was at 9 o'clock, which is not a great slot. But they had to be there because News at 10 was at News at 10. It had been that way for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then ITV, because they wanted to sell advertising, there was a peak viewing 10 p.m. or becoming peak viewing. People went to bed later. They wanted to shift the news around. They announced rather badly thought out that they were going to start moving the news around to accommodate detective series and stuff. They're going to put at 10 p.m. About 4 days later, I can remember standing in the newsroom and an email went around and Greg Dyke said, we're moving to News at 10 and we're doing it on Monday. And that was incredible. A live TV program with all the shift patterns built around a 9 p.m. news program. And this was like the Wednesday, and it was really exciting. And it affected us because we were regional news. We came afterwards, so suddenly it's 10:40 instead of 9:40. But it happened in those, 100 hours between then and then. It was done, and everyone felt excited in the project. Now the next DG, his name I can't even remember. I think it's Thompson, something like that. Was a corporate manager. We were supposed to move buildings in the BBC from West London to Broadcasting House, West London back to Central London. That project took about 10 years. And that's the difference, because I think every time someone sat in front of him and said, it's going to take until June, next year, the year after, if we get it done, he'll go, okay. Whereas Greg Dyke would have done what the guy who runs Apple, Steve Jobs, and all these people, he would have said, well, we're doing it by Wednesday. So as what Elon Musk is getting all these rockets to go to space. So I think there is a strong element of that. Now you can apply that. We don't have to do big things like move a news program or send a rocket into space, but you can say to yourself, I'm going to get this book finished by the end of the month.
Yeah. And I do say to people, when I used to do book coaching and people talk to me about writing their first novel, I always told them to set a deadline and to not make it something kind of like, well, I want to do it. I'm going to, 3 years time, because then you will take 3 years. It needs to be, I'm not saying put yourself under a huge amount of pressure, but you need to have a bit of impetus to get going. But it's a bit like in traditional publishing, normally a publishing schedule, they have quite long lead up to their release dates. And then the second Rebecca Yarros book, because the first one went absolutely crazy, Fourth Wing, they published the next one, I think, only in about 6 months. So it's exactly that. It shows you, like, if there really is the impetus, you can make it happen.
Yeah.
It's just, having the impetus to do it.
Okay. So Hofstadter's Law is the next one. Hofstadter's Law.
I like that.
And it's slightly contradictory. It says things usually take longer than we think. This is like a general rule, isn't it? So
I don't think it is contradictory necessarily, because I think the other one is about giving yourself a deadline and making it a realistic one, because there is like for me, for example, if I do only leave myself that week to write a book, there will be something that comes up that means it's going to take slightly longer.
And it does say here, the last 10% of a task often takes as much as time as the first 90% did. And that's certainly true, I think, in book writing, don't you think? Again,
no, I think that's the opposite. I'm the opposite, yeah. I think that's to do with the way that I plot, though. I always know the ending. Like, I always see the ending in my head. So I'll write the first chapter pretty quickly, and then that middle bit is a slog. But the last, I mean, I probably write about 5,000 words an hour in that last 10% because I've got all the story in my head then. I can see it all and I'm just desperate to get it down on paper.
Okay, next one is called anchoring bias. The first thing you learn or see, the anchor, influences what you think next. So how something's presented to you immediately is going to colour how you perceive it from then on. And they've given an example here of a sales tactic of an item, a car in this case, with a label saying $30,000 on it. And then the first thing you think is $30,000 is a lot for a car. It's expensive. The second one is the same car, but two labels. One was $60,000 crossed out and $30,000 written in. And so their bias is thinking from then on, they're thinking, well, this is a good deal. Even if it's too expensive for me, this is a good deal. So it changes the way they look because the first thing they saw was the way that was presented. Mm-hmm. And I think this is also useful for us to think about the way we work, the way we do things. It's a bit like Einstein's law, which may come up in this list, I don't know, which is if you do the same thing over and over again, expect different results as a definition of insanity. I think maybe we do things because that's our experience of doing things, which is understandable, but things won't necessarily, what's worked to get you here is not what's going to work to get you where you need to be next year.
Yeah, or so what works for somebody else isn't necessarily what's going to work for you. A lot of people try to replicate someone exactly because they see their success and they're like, okay, well, this author did this, this, and this, so therefore I need to do this, this, and this. And even within the same genre, that doesn't work. So I see it all the time.
So anchoring bias is how you first present things. So it's useful for us in presenting deals to people, especially I think if you've got something that's expensive, like, you're going to do one of your books for £25 or whatever. Not a bad way of doing it is to say it's 35, but going to be 25 this week. That's a simple tactic that always works. And suddenly there's 25. Instead of the first thought being, would I pay 25 for a book? The first thought is, it's on offer. It's cheaper than it should be. Mm-hmm. Even if it's still...
With bundles and things in my direct store, and people are doing it in TikTok Shop. There's the price that's like, if you bought this somewhere else, this bundle would be $150, but buy it through TikTok Shop and you're going to get it for $70. And suddenly that $70 feels like an absolute bargain.
Even though there's a lot of spend on it. Yeah,
people are though. It's crazy the amount of money people are spending on special editions. Blows my mind.
Our next razor is Eisenhower's matrix. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the definition of productive and once said, I have two kinds of problems, the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important and the important are never urgent. Stephen Covey repackaged it as the Eisenhower matrix. So you've got a little table here of urgent and important. So do it now. Not urgent, decide, schedule time to do it. Not important, delegate who can do that for you or delete or eliminate it. So basically, I suppose what this is saying is...
I like that.
In the moment, something feels urgent and important, but actually isn't. And there's a trick that I use sometimes, which is when someone contacts me with a very urgent problem, I ignore it for a couple of hours. Mm-hmm. And a couple of hours later, the problem's gone away because they've solved it themselves. They've had to because of, the time or whatever. And that's not being lazy or not being efficient. Actually, it's being efficient, particularly if you get somebody whose first instinct is always to ask the question, always to pick up the phone.
Because you do get those people who, I had somebody email me for my Kickstarter saying they needed a tracking link, the book's not arrived, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, we'd have to send another one. And they just emailed too quickly. They'd barely given it a week between when I'd dispatched them, which was before Christmas. So instead of ordering another print copy straight away, I was like, just going to leave it and see if they get back in touch and say, it's magically appeared. And that's what happened. So
yeah.
But I think as well, when you're growing, when your business is growing, you do, well, any point actually, as self-employed people, you have that point where you can feel really overwhelmed by the amount of stuff, and everything feels urgent and everything feels important. But most of the time it's not. It's books. We're not heart surgeons. So, but if you, maybe we should put the link to this somewhere, because I quite like that little matrix graphic of how to decide.
I'll put the link in the show notes to go with this. The next one is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Unskilled individuals overestimate their ability and experts underestimate their ability.
This is a little bit like that quote, everybody should have the confidence of a mediocre white man.
Yeah.
Or a mediocre middle-aged white man, I think, because they're usually quite unskilled and underqualified, but have the absolute confidence that they can go and smash it. And then you get a lot of very, very talented, very skilled people who are not, of that demographic, who really underestimate how good they are.
Yeah. And this is the old adage about, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. You think a little knowledge of a subject gives you confidence, undue confidence. And the more you learn, the less you realize you know about something.
Yeah. Which I think ties in a little bit to just analysing who you're getting your information from. If somebody is saying something that you're going to pay attention to, just have a little think about who they are. And when you're at networking events, actually, I think this is why networking events are important, to talk to people who you don't necessarily know or have heard of, because a lot of people have really valuable things to say. They just might not be the loudest people or the people shouting about their experiences.
Yeah. Well, I think also you can think about yourself and the way that you operate systems like ads platforms, which can be complicated. But there is a tendency at the beginning. It's like there's always this kind of sharp learning curve. And then in any subject you learn, so it might be sport, might be you take up tennis, might be learning to fly, learning to drive. At the beginning, you know nothing, and you suddenly know what feels like everything about it. And then for the rest of your life is a very, very shallow rise up. It's learning more and getting better. So same with learning ads, I think, is that at the beginning you think, I can do it. I know how the structure of campaigns work in Facebook. I can set up a campaign now. I do that. And then you don't get the results you want. That's because that last 10% of learning is 80% of the income. So yeah, just be aware that a little knowledge is not necessarily going to get you there. What we've got next, we have Gall's law. A complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. Great things start simple, like learning to crawl before you can walk and then run. I'm a big believer in keeping things as simple as possible. In fact, there's an Einstein quote, again, which might be here and in the list, which is things should be as simple as possible, but not any simpler.
Yeah.
So sometimes things can be complicated, but they still should be as simple as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we do have a tendency to overcomplicate things. That's kind of something that I'm trying to do in particular with my social media. And I think I said I've hired a social media manager, and that's her main thing, is that a lot of us overcomplicate it. Like we really, really do. We get so in our heads about what strategy we should have and what should we be putting on Instagram and what should we be putting on TikTok and where should we be doing it all. And it's actually quite simple. You can do like one set of videos, and there is software that you can use that will upload it to all the different places all at once. You can have a little spreadsheet with all your hashtags in, and then you're done. And you don't have to overthink it and make this great big complicated thing out of it. You can, but you really don't need to.
This one I like, the halo effect. When you like one thing about someone, you start to think everything about them is good. This is so true, isn't it?
As somebody who's been online dating for 18 months, yes. Although now it's swung the other way. Now I'm just seeing one red flag and I'm like, no.
Interesting, the blurb on this one sort of turns it on its head about your own perception of yourself. This can be a challenge for people who become very good in one area of life and automatically think they're great in other areas. Now, I'll tell you who's guilty of that. Excuse me.
Is it someone we know? Because we're on a podcast.
Not naming any names. But I think there's a certain type of professional, often lawyers. Not always lawyers. People are going to think I'm talking about Markham. There's nobody in our...
Just make that very clear.
But there are two people I know. Can I say what their jobs are? They're nothing to do with publishing, self-publishing. One is a pilot and one is a lawyer. And they both think they're God's gift to everything because they're very good at that particular job. And one of them is like very senior in law and the other one's very senior in flying. And they are the most bullish
As somebody,
I think overbearing, opinionated, self-opinionated people, if you read their social media, it's like, the bloody government, absolutely ridiculous. They could solve this tomorrow by doing that. I'm thinking, I know enough about government to know it's more complicated than you think. Solving those problems you think are easy. I think that is an example of that halo effect when it's on yourself. So you're very, very good. But I always think about people in those professions. You're very, very good in a little box.
yeah, but because they're usually people who've focused their entire life on that thing, doctors, surgeons, lawyers, those so of course they're absolutely brilliant at that. But a lot of the time it can lead to quite a closed off,
Arrogant.
experience of everything else. So,
Yes.
I usually call myself a jack of all trades because I'm not particularly great at anything. I'm sort of a little bit good at lots of things, but because I haven't really done that thing where you pick at one of those really high flying
Yes.
careers and excel at it. But I think if we apply this to thinking about who you take advice from, I think a lot of that can be true with, with celebrities, with authors who have a platform. If you like one thing about them, just because you might like listening to me and James on a podcast, that doesn't mean that you have to take everything that we say as gospel or that we're right about everything. You might really like somebody's books, but that doesn't mean that they know how to market them. You might really like somebody's books, but that doesn't mean they know how to sell you a marketing course. You've got to be discerning.
Just be wary about where you get your information from. So if somebody is an expert in marketing, that's what they do, then I would give them more weight. But if they're, I don't know, it's a bit like this is a crass example, getting your politics from your rock star or your actor.
Mhm.
I mean, it's fine. Actors have opinions on politics and they post it. But honestly,
Looking at you, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger, George Clooney, Mark Ruffalo's very opinionated stuff. But I don't give an iota of weight to Mark Ruffalo's opinion on politics because he's a good actor. That doesn't mean in any way, shape or form his political opinions any more informed than mine.
I think we're doing Mark Ruffalo a disservice here. I don't know anything about his political background.
It's just gobby. I mean, there's lots of people who like George Clooney's interested in politics, and he occasionally weighs in, and I think his stuff's very apposite. But there are some people who think because they've got a platform, they've got to use it. But what does that mean? You've got a platform because you're an actor. So use your platform to talk to people about acting because that's what you know about. Using a platform to talk about economics, I'll probably listen to an economics professor.
Because it's a lot of the time it's their opinion, but the people who are huge super fans will often take that as gospel because it's being said to them by somebody who they really, look up to and admire. Just as a little aside, my friend has his degree certificate signed by Arnold Schwarzenegger because he went to, is it Berkeley in California? Yeah.
Well, don't know, but yeah, probably sounds like a California university would be the right place.
Yeah.
But Arnold Schwarzenegger, I suppose, is an exception because he, like Ronald Reagan, he went from acting into politics. He became a politician. That is a bit different. And he's a great guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's a very moderate voice, I think, in American politics, by the way.
He owns a lot of little horses, doesn't he? I find that quite cute. Yeah.
How's he even get on a little horse? He's so huge and heavy.
I don't think he rides them. Just has them like pets on his giant ranch. The next one is called...
American politics.
How many more have we got? Not too many. The next one is
25.
called The Law of Ruin.
The longer you play a game of chance,
the more likely you are to lose everything.
Well, that's true. I mean, that just stands to reason, doesn't it? So if what you're doing is a high-risk strategy, the longer you do it, the more open you are to it all going wrong.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not a gambler. I'm really not a risk taker. I didn't gamble at all when we went to Vegas. Didn't even do a slot machine.
No, I didn't actually this time. But did I? No, we did. We went out one night with the Bookvault boys. We found the cheapest casino we could find.
Oh yeah, the Bookvault boys. I've heard about them.
It's really boring though, gambling. Not for me. But in terms of our marketing and stuff, high risk strategies, throwing expensive marketing things that might work once in a while, but that's not a long term strategy. Okay, the law of triviality. People spend a lot of time on small details but ignore the big things, like worrying about optimizing your process and systems all day instead of just getting shit done. Put very succinctly there.
I think a lot of this happens when we're writing books, when we're in the early stages, like maybe your first novel, and you can really get weighed down by the little tiny details, like, I don't know, what that character's name is or whether they've got brown eyes or blue eyes, or like really tiny things, or even on a cover, on a book cover, you can get really het up on, I'm not really sure I like the position of that cloud in the background. I think it might need to be a little bit lower down, and there's a tree there that I think should be a different type of tree. And actually you're not looking at whether the whole thing works. And maybe if you've got time to faff around with that stuff, but a lot of the time it's isn't really not the things that you need to be focusing on.
Yeah, that's a really good example of people saying, but my character's got blonde hair. And so, fine, we can change it, but it's not important.
The dog has a slightly bendy left ear, and the dog on the cover doesn't have that like little bend in his ear. Nobody's going to notice. No. Does the cover say post-apocalyptic book? Yes, great, go ahead. Don't worry about the dog's ear.
Yeah, and you see, when you buy a book in the modern world, you buy a book off Amazon, and it gets delivered to your Kindle, so you see the cover there, which tells you it's a post-apoc book, would you like reading? So you download it, you buy it. You might never see that cover again. So the idea that by the time you get to the end of the book, you're going to go back and say, hang on, the main character had blonde hair. And the character on the front of this book is just, the chance of that actually happening, a reader actually coming to that conclusion, is 0%. But we will still have discussions with authors who say, no, the character, it's blonde, so it's got to be blonde.
Or, I think my name needs to be slightly higher up, or could we just tweak the font on the T at the end of I remember when I worked in traditional publishing, we had a similar thing with an author who'd written a kid's book about diving and got really upset because they wouldn't use a picture of him diving on the front cover. And they're like, we don't have a photo of you diving that works. And you're in a diving suit with a helmet and things on. No, but it's not helmet, mask thing. Nobody knows whether it's you or not you. Yeah. And it's from the back. I love the next one, by the way. I think this is very relevant.
The sunk cost fallacy. You keep doing something because you've already spent time and money on it. Like eating more dessert, even when you're full because you paid for it.
Yeah.
So the rational thing to do, if we were starting over today, would I still take on this project? What we actually do, if I quit now, all those hours of sweat and tears were for nothing, but actually ditching the project was a better idea.
Yeah, I think this applies to, sometimes a backlist title just doesn't work. Or a series, and there's this thing where it's like, oh God, but I've put loads of money into marketing it over the years, and I've got to keep going. I've got to make it a success. And I've got 2 young adult books now which I've unpublished because they weren't selling. I might do something with them in the future. I might not, but that wasn't a waste because it was part of my journey. It was part of growing as a writer. It was part of learning lessons. But to keep vlogging something, to keep sinking money into it, if it's proven that it's not going to work at this point in time, I'm not saying you can't go back and analyze it later on, is something that I think we, especially because we feel so much about our work, we feel inclined to do, but it's not always the right thing.
Yeah. And marketing strategies that you've spent some money on, it's not working, be brutal.
Yeah, exactly.
Kill your babies.
Sunk so much money into this Facebook ad, so I need to keep it going. Or I paid for this cover. I paid, $500 for this cover, so I'm not changing it because I spent money on this.
That's not the right reason for keeping the cover. You spent the money on it.
It's a false economy.
Yeah. Okay, this one I think is relevant to us. The Hawthorne effect. When people know they're being watched, they work harder. Like cleaning your room faster when your mum is watching. When you want to perform at your best, set up a friend to work side by side with you to keep you accountable. This is something I think we as authors do understand is an issue for us as authors because we work by ourselves, which is why there is an emphasis and a focus on writing sprints and accountability partners, but it's still not that widespread. Some people use them all the time.
I mean, Sasha and I talked about this in our little episode that we did together because we buddy quite a lot, where sometimes it will be writing sprints, sometimes we'll actually be chatting to each other. But I mean, the other day we both just needed to get stuff done and didn't want any distractions. So we had each other on mute and we were like, right, what are you going to do in the next hour? What are you going to do in the next hour? Okay, I'll mute you. We'll check in at the top of the hour. Go do your stuff. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have done all that like rubbish admin that I needed to do that day. So I highly recommend people try it. It sounds a little bit odd. And I suppose it needs to be somebody that you're sort of comfortable with. You don't mind having a little floating head sat there on your computer watching you. But essentially, it's called body doubling if you do it that way as opposed to sprinting. But definitely give it a try if it's something that you're struggling with.
Yeah. Well, we have talked about setting up sort of sprinting and accountability partners in the Discord channel. I know some people are doing that, but maybe we could formalize it. We've got some news coming up in the future about that Discord. So yeah. Okay. Here's the Streisand effect. when you try to hide something, it often gets more attention. If you spill the juice and hide it with a rug, people will probably notice the rug and find the spill. When you censor someone, you actually highlight them. So I don't know how relevant this is to us. I do remember a little bit to when I was in the BBC and I did my defence reporting, you'd be on the inside of defence organisations quite often. Sometimes you'd be in, the bunker in Northwood in London, which is like the secret situation room, and flying in a fast jet, for instance. There's stuff there that you can't film. It's a secret. But I remember being told by someone in the military once is the only way to properly keep a secret is make sure no one knows you've got it. So anybody pretending to be someone, like they're a lawyer or they're in the military, and they sort of wink at you, say, well, I know a few things. They don't know anything. Or they're very shit at keeping secrets, because the moment they tell you they've got a secret, you're exponentially closer to finding it out than you were. If they just say, there's another old adage we were told as reporters is the special forces soldier, the guy who basically tells you he used to be in the special forces was probably a chef.
Yeah.
Cook. And the guy who tells you he used to be a cook was probably in the special forces.
Yeah.
Because that's how you keep secrets, is you don't tell anyone you've got the secret in the first place. I don't know how relevant that is for us, but it is definitely something. If you write thrillers or you write romances, or you put people in situations, it is something to get somebody caught out, perhaps by not being very good at keeping secrets. But.
Yeah. So, right, I think we're on. Oh, are we nearly there? I think so.
No, that's
one
it.
more. Oh, was that it?
No, that's
it. Just a little. I'm sad. I was enjoying that.
Yeah. So Clint Murphy, he has a whole book of these. Simplify Your Decisions with Razors.
By the book.
So by the book.
He looks very shiny, doesn't he? He's got very nice white teeth in his little picture.
Yeah, there you go. He's made good decisions about his dentistry. And if you like that about him, you automatically start liking other things about him.
Exactly. I thought, look, he's got such a shiny, professional, looks nice in his nice little suit. So therefore, everything in his book must be good. We've enjoyed the little infographics. So therefore, the content of his book must be good.
I am Clint Murphy. At I am Clint Murphy is his handle on X. I'm going to copy that link and we're going to put it into the show notes. I just think it's a useful set of things to read through and start thinking, oh, okay, so am I thinking in the most efficient way? Am I approaching things in the most efficient way, most productive way? Am I guilty of going down some of these old wisdom, I suppose? We call them razors, whatever. But basically, there's an old wives' expression. Can we still use that expression? Old wives' tale?
Sure.
There's an old nursery rhyme somewhere that probably alludes to this that's 500 years old, because it's sort of human condition stuff. But
yeah, and I think we, as authors, we do need to sometimes look outside of just authoring for our advice.
Yeah.
Like, we are running businesses, so that doesn't mean we just have to read stuff that's to do with writing and running a publishing business. You can learn a lot from looking at general business advice for entrepreneurs, not just the stuff that we're encountering as authors every day.
Yeah. So should we do reviews next week?
Yeah, let's do reviews.
We've got to pull out our 3 worst and 3 best reviews, and then see if we can find some hilarious reviews elsewhere. And we'll talk about.
And if anyone else wants to give us their bad reviews,
yes,
in the Discord, can you do that, please? And then we'll read some out.
Yeah. So
give us the bad review and kind of how you dealt with it, and we'll read a couple out.
We'll specifically focus on how to deal with bad reviews.
Yeah, because I think when you're starting out, it's the thing that most people are most scared about. And I know I was, because I'm somebody who, I do care what people think. And I do, I used to take things very personally, and I thought that I would really struggle to get bad reviews. And it's something that's genuinely never bothered me. So we'll talk about strategies for how to deal with them and how they can be beneficial as well, like what you can learn from them.
I think I'm the same, but only because I worked in an industry where the public used to ask to be on TV, the public used to write in and say rude things about you all the time. But I think had I not had that, I think when that first started, it really did affect me. I hated it. In actual fact, my last BBC story, we've got BBC stories today. We had a computer system, and there were a load of files, and they used to put the critical emails, they used to hide them from where you couldn't read them as presenters, because what's the point of telling? The women in particular got it a lot worse than I did. That she looks fat, or just really rude. I mean, if I turned up for work like that, I'd expect to be sacked. They'd say things like that to the women every single time a woman turned up. The blokes got it a bit, but I remember once seeing a couple of them in a row that said critical blatch 2. I'm thinking, well, don't call them that. just say note 3 or note 4? Because I can't read it. All I know is that people are writing in saying, I don't like this man.
I'm going to start every email I ever send you from now on.
Critical
It's going to start
Blatch.
Critical Blatch.
Actually, it sounds like a thriller cover.
It
Thriller
does, yeah.
Critical Blatch.
It actually sounds like this is really urgent.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't that sort of critical. All right, look, thank you very much indeed. We'll do reviews next week. Stay in the Discord channel, post in your bad reviews, and we'll go through some of them and have a laugh and tell you how to deal with them. And we'll talk more specifically, I think, about why you get bad reviews and how you can stop getting them in the future.
Yeah, and don't forget to sign up for the waitlist if you're interested in the Cambridge retreat with me and James.
IndieWritersClub.com/retreat.
And I will send James a Critical Blatch email to make sure he remembers to actually make the link live.
Critical Strike, Critical Blatch. Roger, over and out.
Sign up for episode alerts at IndieWritersClub.com. Come and chat with us at our exclusive Discord server at IndieWritersClub.com/Discord. Or join our Facebook group at IndieWritersClub.com/Facebook. And you can support the podcast at IndieWritersClub.com/support. And don't forget to share your weekly word counts, because no matter what you've achieved this week, we're here to cheer you on. Thank you for being part of the Indie Writers Club.
The Indie Writers Club was brought to you by Publish Drive. With one click, self-publish your ebooks, audiobooks and print books to thousands of stores and libraries worldwide. And now you can start for free forever. Publish Drive's new free plan lets you publish your first ebook absolutely free. No subscription fees, no commissions, keep 100% of the royalties. Get your titles online in just a few minutes at publishdrive.com.